Hi everyone. Today I'm here with Tyler Benedict, the founder of BikeRumor and Peak Content Summit, and we're here to talk a little bit about events and digital publishing. Tyler, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
So before we really dive into things, I kind of wanted to start by digging into your background and how your experiences and relationships in publishing have kind of led you to build your own events.
Yeah, sure. So I have to go back quite a way. I really was thinking about like why events were interesting to me. And so before I did Bike Rumor, I had a beverage company that started off as like a caffeinated sports drink, not morphed into an energy drink, but all the while I was in mountain biking. And honestly, those were, the more I think about it and go back, it was kind of like those were an excuse to be able to travel around to different bike events and just sort of like, set up an expo and then go ride at the event and stuff. So when we did those, this was really a long time ago, 15, almost 20 years ago now. 24-hour mountain bike racing was kind of a thing. Like it's since died off, but for a while it was a big deal. 24-hour mountain bike races were very popular. You could do it solo, you could do teams. And so I thought, well, okay, I've got a caffeinated sports drink. 24-hour racing seems like a perfect fit. So I launched our own event. It was called um, a couple things based on what the product name was, but it was basically like the Pro Light 24-hour and then the Burn 24-hour mountain bike race. And so for about 5 years, I ran that event myself and eventually sold it and helped co-run it with some friends for a couple more years before just, removing myself from it. So I've been putting on events for much longer than I've had Bike Rumor, which, for anyone not familiar, is a cycling tech blog that covers the industry from the products and tech side of it and stuff. So um, that was kind of my foray into events, was using it as a marketing vehicle. And over the years, because I've also done podcast interviews with entrepreneurs and other founders, one of them was the guy that started Competitor Group. And so similarly, they were a publisher, but they kind of flip-flopped it. They were putting on a lot of running events and some triathlons and stuff, and ended up finding that their magazines were basically an excellent promotional vehicle for their events. And there's another big publisher that has since changed ownership hands quite a few times. So I'm not sure how they're doing it before doing it now, but it was the same thing. Like they put on hundreds of running events throughout the US. And so they were actually using their magazines as promotional vehicles to promote all of their races, which just, obviously ran year round throughout the US. So, it's been really interesting because I'm always curious about how things work and why people are starting these businesses, and seeing the different approaches to running events in conjunction with some kind of product or media outlet is, there's a lot of ways to do it. So
Yeah, definitely. You just mentioned, marketing and promotion. What are some other reasons why events are so popular among publishers?
well, revenue for one, and I've got a couple of examples. So Dirt Rag, which was a long-standing mountain bike magazine, they were around really forever, and they just shut down either early this year or last year, which is a bit of a shame. And they actually had kind of three different divisions. And honestly, I forget what the third one was, but one was like the magazine and website, one was their events business, and then were doing something else. But from every time I talked to the founder over the years, because we got to know each other quite well, as the event side was super profitable. And so it's almost a shame that the whole company kind of like they just shut everything down. But that was, I think, for quite a while, without seeing their numbers, probably what was keeping them afloat was, events can be very, very profitable. And so I think that's, there's obvious appeal to that. And then the other is, I mean, there's a lot of benefits. You can use them to kind of just get out and get in touch with your customers, your readers, whatever, or you can kind of use it to build your credibility in a certain space. And we'll get to that, but that was one of my motivations for my most recent event, was just sort of to kind of spin off and build some credibility in the content marketing side of things.
Yeah, you just mentioned, engaging with your audience, your customers and readers. How are event audiences and digital audiences similar, and how are they different?
um, Similar. I hadn't really thought about that one. I don't know if I have a good answer for that, but different. it's funny, we're talking about this with my wife because she kind of looks at things way different than I do. So I'm coming out from a very business standpoint and stuff, and she's coming out from a more emotional and people side of it. But one of the things that we find interesting is like, so when I put on my content marketing event, people were there and they were excited to be there, and I was there, and we could have great conversations face to face, and it tended to be more, the feedback and the comments and everything were very positive and constructive, and it was a dialogue. Whereas with publishing, and we'll have to use online as a example for this because print doesn't really have like a comment section, you tend to get comments that are not often constructive, more combative, or just like, you're stupid type thing. And so you get, it's funny because like the people reading and commenting on my website, they're not paying anything. And yet a lot of times this can be kind of negative or snarky or whatever. The people coming to my conference paid a lot of money to be there, and they're way more happy and engaged and excited. And so if anything, you think it would be flip-flopped, but that was one of the big differences we noticed for sure.
Yeah, definitely. People at events, I mean, they've got to be, the diehard fans or the ones that have really a big affinity for either the brand or whoever's hosting it. So yeah, I do imagine that that audience is like probably the one that you want to get the most feedback from, just because they are the ones that are the most committed. What are some of the biggest challenges that you came across when organizing your own event?
Well, I think a lot of it was at first like logistical, finding the location, finding the caterers, the back end systems that we were going to use to handle registration and then everything. And then all of that even entails like a lot. Like once you find a hotel, then it's like figuring out the booking, if you want to have like a special rate, you have to book a certain number of rooms. So like all of this was a massive learning curve for me, right? Like I didn't realize that in order to get a special rate, I thought you just ask the hotel, say, hey, can you give us a rate? We're going to have like a lot of people. They're like, well, yeah, sure. But you have to guarantee these rooms. And so like I actually lost a couple $1,000s because like we filled the first block. So I was like, oh, well, we need some more. And then we didn't quite fill that one. They're like, sorry, you got to pay for those rooms. Great, thank you. So there's stuff like that, and just all the little stuff that once you start getting into it, you really need to think about the entire experience for an attendee, from the time they hear about your event to going through your website to registering, from the time they show up, and then even once they leave. And it's just a lot of stuff to think about. So there's people out there that put on events and you can hire somebody, but if you're putting on a first year event, you're not quite sure what the attendance is going to be, that could be a massive expense that a lot of maybe first time events can't stomach. So I didn't want to pay it, and I had the benefit of having put on some events in the past, so I felt comfortable managing myself. And then I had my wife helping me. I have a virtual assistant, and she was helping with some of the basic stuff. So I think that's one of the big challenges. The other challenge is just finding the audience, right? Like who's going to go there and reaching out to them and marketing it. Again, like if you're trying to do it all yourself, you can go down a lot of rabbit holes about social media marketing and how to advertise best on Facebook or Twitter. And so, whatever it is that you're going to do, trying to build an email list. I mean, especially for first year events, like you got to do all this from scratch. So it's the same thing. You can try and figure out yourself and not waste, spend a ton of time doing it, or you can hire people that know how to do it, but it costs money. So ultimately you kind of have to weigh like how much of a budget do you have to put on this event and how much of it do you want to do yourself? So, and there's another side of that I'll get to later on. I have some notes for kind of some wrap up thoughts that as far as time is concerned. So.
All right. Just the last question that I have for you is what are some of your favorite events to attend and participate in? And we've done a couple events together, and I feel like every time I see you at an event, you're like, oh, I've got this other event to go to later on tonight or tomorrow. And I'm just like, wow, you're a really popular guy, Tyler.
Oh, geez. I try like, well, for your events, right? I'm traveling, either across the country or the one time to London and stuff. So I'm like, well, heck, if I'm going to be in London, I'm going to find some other cool stuff to do. So I just start reaching out to everybody that I know in that area or wherever. and just kind of see what else is going on. For like a lot of the bike events I go to, there's already other bike things going on. A lot of times it's product launches that we're invited to, or dinners just to kind of schmooze the media, which are always super awesome. Um, so sometimes it's just little stuff. But as far as like official events, yeah, the pub intelligence ones that Ezo puts on are fantastic. And I would recommend any publisher go and check those out if there's one in your area. Um, and I think, those, just to plug you guys a little bit, the networking there, like I've made some pretty cool contacts and we've stayed in touch and has led to some other opportunities over time. So um, I do enjoy social media marketing world a lot. I'm not sure if I'm going to go in 2021 just because I see how safe everybody feels with travel and stuff. Because that's like 10,000 people crammed into a conference, area. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that yet, but generally speaking, those are some really good ones. There's some other ones that I've had on my radar that are more, content marketing focused, some regional ones and stuff. But that kind of stuff I like. And then I like, longer distance, kind of one day, but all day mountain bike races and stuff like that, or gravel races. Those are pretty fun to attend to, and seeing how the promoters use the terrain in a certain area, because everywhere's different. If you go to Utah, it's going to be way different than one in Vermont. And just kind of seeing how people use the terrain and the local flavor of the area to kind of give their events a unique spin. So
All right. And then I'm sure you have some, last minute tips or kind of just not like, little nuggets of knowledge that you want to share. So I'll give you that chance now.
all right, yeah, they're going to be a little bit all over the place. So I mentioned revenue being one side of why I think events are popular for publishers and media and stuff. And so I've seen this happen in several different ways. So I just want to share some of what I've seen people doing that seems to be successful. So there's entry fees, obviously. So like for the ones that we're putting on run events, obviously, you think about, if you start thinking about the numbers for a minute there, like even if a running event's like $20 to enter, right? And then, or 25, I think most of them are probably like 25, and they get a t-shirt and this, that, and the other and stuff, like after you give them the t-shirt and the timing chip and all this stuff and pay for it, you're still probably making something like $10 a person. So if you're putting on a big running event, and some of these running events can bring in 10,000 people. If you do the math, that is a lot of net profit on an event that literally, once you've got a system down and dialed, it's honestly not that much work to do. Some of the hardest part is permitting and closing streets for a running event, but that's just one example. So like, I think if people sat down and started doing the math on what was possible in terms of revenue, events make a lot of sense that way. And so the other thing that I've seen is, like expos. Like, so there's a European cycling media group that has several titles, and they put on kind of like expo festival type things where the brands that often advertise or that are talked about in their outlets come and set up a tent and, demo bikes and stuff like that. And so for them, it's a great way to kind of build reader affinity, because they're like inviting their readers to come hang out and meet the brand people and all that. So it's kind of goodwill building. And for the brands that are coming, it's a good way to meet all the readers in person and kind of, promote their products face to face, which is huge. But those are all paying exhibitors, and then they have sponsors for the event. So it's not only if you're charging admission, then you can make sponsorship revenue, and then exhibitor revenue and stuff. So there's a lot of different ways to make money on events that I think even after the event with follow-up marketing and stuff like that. So that's when, if you get really creative, you can find a lot of ways to make money on events. And then like, so with BikeRumor, events have been on the back of my mind a lot, and I think there's probably some room for it. There's also just a lot of really good events out there now. So coming up with something different, it would be, I don't know, a little bit of a challenge, but there's different can be a lot of things too. So if you're thinking about putting on an event, I think of it different. Like, are you going to just do something that's very different? Like the experience is different, or maybe you're doing something that was popular in one geographic region and doing it somewhere else. For a while, the Southeast of the US had a real dearth of cool cycling festivals and expos and stuff, but there's a lot of population density in the Southeast. So you can look at like, where is an underserved geographic market, or you can just try and look at an underserved kind of topical market, whatever it is. Like, so for BikeRumor, totally unrelated to that because we didn't make any money on this, and it was there's better ways to reach people. But just for fun, a few years back, we did something called the swag toss. So we would call up like 20 brands and get them to donate a bunch of stuff. And then we did it in a couple of different areas like Asheville and Little Rock and stuff. And we would just tell people, hey, meet us at the trail. We're all going to go ride and have fun. It's just a casual thing, and get there like 20 minutes early because we're going to do a giant raffle toss and just stand on top of the van and throw out like a couple $1,000s worth of bike stuff. So we got, 100 plus people to show up, which was super fun. You get to go ride with a bunch of locals and you get a little buzz about it, which was cool. But also, like, especially now, there's much more efficient ways to reach way more people. So for us, it was just kind of fun, get on a road trip and go ride somewhere with people. But there's just all kinds of ways to do it. And so I'm going to scroll down here real quick on my screen. The one thing I wanted two more things. So the time, right? So if you're going to put on an event, even if you're not managing the whole thing, but whatever your time involvement is with that, you have to look at the opportunity cost. So if I, like with Peak Content Summit, which was the content marketing strategy conference I put on in March of this year, really all told, I probably put like 2+ weeks of time into organizing that. And so like, if you look back, like it was great. I made, I think like about $1,000 total profit on that at the end of the day, which, for the time, it was not worth it. Now there's tangible intangibles like the relationship we built, and I've been working with a few of the people there since. Some of them we've gotten on as advertisers with BikeRumor. So it's not always the money, the upfront money of it. It's not always the thing, but I had to look at, like, is it worth doing again? Like for the time and energy I put into that, what could I have done in those 2 weeks that might have accomplished the same things in a much more efficient manner or cost-effective manner too? So that's something to think about too, because sometimes you just get caught up in the idea of putting on a cool event and you don't realize that, like, when it's all said and done, you might have made a little bit of profit, but the amount of time that you spend it is ultimately you kind of lost a little bit. So, and then the other side of it is to just sort of build brand credibility. So I mentioned this at the beginning, like with Peak Content Summit, my goal was to put myself out there as an expert in content marketing. And a good way to do that is to surround yourself with other people who are even better known than you with content marketing and try and get them to share expertise. And so when you can surround yourself with these people and host and own the event that they're coming to and own the experience, you can try and create a really amazing experience. And if everything goes well, then it reflects really, really well on you, the promoter, me, whoever was in charge of the event. And so besides just really wanting to do that as something cool for some of the cycling industry, because there's a lot of need for better content marketing advice and information in that particular industry. I also thought it was a great way to just kind of like really let people know that, hey, look, like I'm good at this and you can trust me now, like look what I've done. Right. So there's a lot of that too.
Yeah, those are all good tidbits. Yeah, I think one of the main things I love about events is that you can be creative in so many ways, like you mentioned, from sponsorships and things like that to the type of experience that people have. One thing that I have experienced at events is different brands or companies kind of doing, I wouldn't call them gimmicky things, but things that do grab your attention. But now that I think about it, I can't even recall like the brand that did it. Like at one event, they had like a pancake station where they had a pancake artist would create your face on a pancake. And I remember the pancake, but I don't actually remember like what booth I got that at. So sometimes I
I
do
bet
feel
they captured your email though.
I'm sure they
Right.
did. So I guess that, there's that plus, but sometimes I do feel like it's easy to kind of get carried away with, that creative experience and things like that. But that's a good point about capturing the emails. I don't even need to really remember the
Yeah, they'll
booth.
remember you.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good point, is like whatever you're building into the experience, it should be relevant. It should tie into the overall theme in some way, right? Like I think with Asheville, like with the caterers, we tried to get local food. We wanted to hype it up. And so this is another thing that it's hard for first year events without any track record or without a huge draw. But Like when I interviewed the guy that was putting on the uh, champion, I'm totally missing the name. It's not champion, but competitor events. Like he would have the municipalities where he would bring his event basically cover all of the costs of hiring the police to close the streets and their hotels and like all this other stuff. Like he would make money on the city before he even made money on the events, because if you're bringing 10,000 people into an area, that's 10,000 times however many days hotel nights, right? That is a bunch of tax revenue for a city. So I would try reaching out to the city. Like I was a little disappointed with the response that we got from our host city for the first year. So like I'm going to shop it around, right? But I had fewer than 100 people at my first one. So as you grow an event, or if you anticipate a huge draw and you can prove that in some way, like it's good to talk to the city and shop it around. Some cities are way more ambitious and kind of aggressive in trying to court events that they know will bring revenue in for them. So that's a pretty powerful way to pick a good city. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good tip. I've never even really thought about that or ever really considered that. Um, that's all I've got for here. Tyler, do you have any last words you want to share?
No, I mean, the one big thing I try to think about with everything is like, what is the experience? Like, think through the entire experience, because the last thing you want is for somebody to show up and they get to a point and then like nobody knows what to do next. So, especially if you've got volunteers. So, yeah. So, actually, to back up, like to the 24-hour races I put on, I literally made a checklist. I was like, okay, somebody registers and then what? And then they get to this page and then what? And then it was like a whole on-site checklist, right? Person pulls in the parking lot. Well, where do they park, right? So somebody needs to, if it's not obvious, tell them where to park, and then they like, okay, make sure it's super obvious. Like they go to register, they fill in, they sign their waivers, they blah, 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 blah. It was literally like you are signing your waiver, then you what? Hand waiver too, right? Like just literally think through every single little motion, because if you don't, chances are really, really good something's going to get forgotten, and then your volunteers aren't going to know what to do. You're going to get distracted and pulled away. So I like on game day, when it's like when I was trying to make sure that all the electronics and the mics and everything were working, I had already given my assistant for the event a full list of what to do. She was great. Like she had no questions for me, and I didn't have to help her with any of the check-in and registration process at all. So I was able to get what I needed done and then go mingle with the guests and, talk to people and kind of just relax and have fun, because I knew everything was taken care of. So that's I can't stress that enough. Like think through every little step, no matter how small and mundane you think it is, it
Yeah,
matters.
it totally does. Yeah, I think that's definitely important to kind of remember and hold on to, is that you can't control everything that goes on that day, but you can definitely mitigate all the different things that could possibly go wrong and be prepared for that. So that's definitely an important one.
Yeah.
Tyler, thank you so much for joining me on this. Looking forward to doing our next one next month.
Yeah, me too. Thanks a lot. See you.